In 1974, a series of gruesome murders took place in a colonial home along the south shore of Long Island, New York. Just 1 year later, a new family moved into this home despite warnings from friends. Soon after, the family was terrorized by paranormal phenomena and forced to flee the home. Today, we're going to unveil the true story behind the infamous Amityville Horror House. This is Red Web. Welcome back, Task Force. It is still October. That means we are dissecting, pulling apart another haunted house. This week, a very gruesome tale, Amityville. I'm going to give it to you right up top. We have a trigger warning for gun violence and various forms of abuse. But talking about it this week, I'm your host, Trevor Collins, and with me, bringing his gut instinct, Alfredo Diaz.
Yeah, Deadpool did this movie.
What?
Yeah.
Wolverines?
Oh my God. Yeah, I saw the movie a long time ago. So what I do remember is the father was possibly possessed or something like that. Went nuts. Had visions of murdering his family and murdered his family.
Right.
But I don't know like any of the details really. And if that, I only saw the Hollywood version of it. So I'm eager to dive in.
This house has a lot of history. There are two big pieces of it that we're going to dive into that get merged because there was a book, as you mentioned, turned into a movie, which take it at very face value. And we're going to dive into the very real stories that spawned that spooky story. And then, of course, as always, we're going to dive into the theories that attempt to answer what's going on, pull apart the reality to find the underlying sinister true nature of what might have actually gone down. And I do want to say, huge shout out. This is the first guest we've had on this show. We're going to bring on Kelsey Childs, aka the Haunted Detective. She's got a theory covering a few things that are a little bit newer that I won't be fully diving into in this outline. And we're going to have her present that theory at the very end. So please stick around. Very interested for that. It pulls in some of the theories revolving revelations in the documentary and a book that came out not too awful long ago. So we're going to dive into that.
Right, because Kelsey was talking about there's a documentary. It's all I heard. That's all I heard was there's a documentary and it involved there are family members from these incidents. At least one. I'm gonna keep it vague for now, and we'll talk about that. But with that said, let's dive into it again. Remember, it's a gruesome story. So we're gonna talk about the DeFeo murders. This is what kicks it all off. On November 13th, 1974, Ronald DeFeo Jr. entered Henry's bar and exclaimed, quote, "You gotta help me. I think my mother and father are shot." DeFeo Jr. returned to his home with a group from the bar, one of whom called the police. In addition to finding DeFeo Jr.'s parents deceased, all 6 family members, both his parents and 4 siblings, were found in their bed face down and had been shot with a rifle. So, the DeFeo house, as it was known at the time, sits at 112 Ocean Drive in the Amityville neighborhood of Long Island, New York. It's a colonial-style house with 5 bedrooms and 3.5 baths. Strangely, after this incident, apparently no neighbors heard the gunshots, and when it comes to the bodies being found in the bed, it seemed that they were purposely placed in their beds. This will come up a little bit more in the theories as to why those two things are there, but I want to present them. I will also show you just a standard picture of that house. You can type in that address to this very day and try to see it on Google Maps, for example, but it's actually blurred out. And the neighboring houses are blurred out. They're really trying to disconnect the house from its history. And I understand. I get it. It'll be hard to.
So all the photos you're going to see now are either showing up, which I would say, please don't do that out of respect to them, and finding them on Google Images. So when it comes to DeFeo Jr., he claimed that the murders must have been committed by a mafia group, and the police then took him into custody. This will again come up in the theories.
This is what, the son?
This is the son, DeFeo Jr.
How old was DeFeo Jr.?
DeFeo Jr. was 23.
Oh, okay.
So relatively young.
So I imagine DeFeo Jr. going into that bar as like a child. So.
Oh yeah. Help!
Right. And then
who
the child
let this 5-year-old in through the saloon doors?
Exactly. And the child going like, it was the mob. I'm like, okay, hold on. He's probably older. I'm picturing him very young.
So a few things to earmark, right? I love to do this. No neighbors hearing it. The bodies seem purposely placed. And now we have DeFeo Jr. himself in the moment claiming that it must have been committed by the mafia. So soon after Of course, he was taken into the police custody at that time. Soon after, the police found many inconsistencies in his story.
Oh, no. I was just about to say, you're probably, obviously, because the police are going to try and do their due diligence. You're a suspect.
Yeah.
That sucks.
Oh, yeah.
To be in a situation where your family's like murdered and then like, so, because you're like, you know, they're not going to try and let that on right away. But also, you know, the back of their mind, they're like, did this person do it?
Right. You are one of the primo suspects. I mean,
pressure I don't like.
Look no further than Netflix's Making a Murderer. I mean, if you really want an inside look at how the pressures can happen or how people can end up in an interrogation that they don't realize, etc. But I'll table that for now. The next day, DeFeo Jr. confessed to murdering his entire family himself. Following trial, DeFeo Jr. was convicted of second-degree murder at 23 years old. So, in the trial, and since his sentence, DeFeo Jr. has made many conflicting claims about the murder. Again, his story does seem a little bit garbled.
Wow, I don't remember any of this. I don't know if this was in the movie or not, but I just...
No, this is the incident, I think that might have been lightly glossed over that then leads to the next incident, the haunting of the Lutz family.
Okay,
got it. To my understanding, I haven't seen the movie in quite a few years, but so it was known that DeFeo Sr. was extremely demanding and abusive towards his children. This led DeFeo Jr. down a path to substance abuse. DeFeo Jr. saw a psychiatrist after numerous outbursts towards his dad, including an instance where he pointed a gun at his dad. He subsequently went to prison and remained there until his death in 2021. Really not all that long ago, but that's the DeFeo story, simply put.
So, nice house. Lots of bad happened to it.
Dark history right out the gate.
Isn't it? I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. Does that information need to be present at the purchase of a home, or is that like state dependent?
Very interesting that you asked that. So the other day I was straight up looking into this, and of course this is in the 70s, so things that could have changed. It depends on the state whether you have to declare if somebody passed away or was murdered at the site. It also sometimes depends on the nature of that. It also depends sometimes on how recent it was. So certain states might force you to declare it if it was within 3 months. Sometimes, like I think California, for example, it doesn't matter. You don't have to say anything. I'm not a lawyer. That's just what my baby memory remembers from the other day looking this up.
Oh, I don't like that at all.
No. Buy used. But yeah, so as you mentioned, so far off to a very dark start. That's where the Lutz family comes in. So despite this now dark history to the house, George and Kathy Lutz decided to purchase the Amityville home for $80,000 in December of 1975.
Wow, that's so cheap.
That was a year after this incident went down.
Did they know about it?
Oh, yes. I'm pretty sure they knew about it.
I mean, a year later, I'm sure it was super publicized and everything like that.
Yeah. So
I mean, like, this is definitely to buy because it was cheap.
Well, we'll get into that.
I didn't think you'd have anything on that.
A little bit. We know, again, some of this will come out in the theories, but I do want to say out top, like they had a range that they were looking for a house in. This $80,000 number was a decent chunk of change up above that range. So we'll get into that.
Whoa. So, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So 13 months after the murders, they move in. A friend of the Lutzes knew the history of this house and insisted that they bless the house. So they knew going into it.
Okay, they knew.
The Lutzes reached out to a priest named Father Ralph Pecoraro to perform the blessing. The priest entered the home alone while the Lutzes unloaded their belongings from their car. So they're thinking this is going to go nice and smooth. The priest goes in, blesses the house. They're already unpacking, ready to go. I'm waiting in a packed car going, give me the thumbs up.
They are already committed. I'm sure, oh man, that's wild. To them, I'm sure they were just like, what, sure, whatever. We'll do it. That reminds me, when I bought my house, my grandmother was like, from a Filipino side of the family, was like, bring this and bring that and bless the house.
Right.
And I was like, nah, Grandma, I'm not doing all that.
Disconnect the house from its past.
Yeah. I was like, I ain't doing all that.
Why not?
You
don't know until you know, and then it's too late.
That's true. As someone who's always just like, look, better safe than sorry.
Hey,
I didn't.
In the infamous words of Grandma Fredo, she's wild.
She's wild.
I love your G-Ma. All right, so Here's what happened. And tell me now, if you're the family, unpacking your car outside, the priest is inside the home, alone, blessing the house. He goes upstairs to one of the bedrooms, and the priest says he heard a very deep voice yell, "Get out," and felt a slap in his face. He came outside after finishing blessing the house, and he told the Lutzes that they should never sleep in that room. The priest left and found blisters on his hand that weren't there previously. He also claimed his car was acting like it was possessed, in his words, with the doors and wipers acting erratically until the engine itself died. After the blessing, the entire family began reporting strange occurrences and, of course, moved in. Tell me, at which point in what I just said do you go, not moving in? Or do you commit because you've already signed the deal?
So look, you lose a lot of money by not committing, but also if they knew before they bought the house, why would you buy the house?
That's the thing. Especially if it was coming from a friend, maybe they
didn't know until they were already
too deep, and so they said, "Okay, fine, we'll do the blessing, and then maybe that because it's the friend's advice, and then maybe we'll cut ties."
I mean, here's the thing. I know at least in like Texas, I think it's like penalized or there's heavy taxes if you're there for less than a year.
Oh yeah, so if you resell it within I think 2 years of it being your primary residence, you then have capital gains tax on it.
Yep, there you go, capital gains
on whatever the net profit.
So
but you also have the equivalent of a security deposit on your contract when you're in the buying process.
Yeah, so I mean, drop the security deposit. I lose it.
Right. It might suck. But the rest of this sucks a lot worse.
Like, I don't know, man. Especially since you got a family.
Yep.
And if you are seeing and experiencing those things, why? I don't understand. Like, who says I'm gonna put my family through this? We're gonna ride this out.
Yeah, it's literally the question that every viewer has when watching a classic horror movie. They go, dude, why?
Even then, if the priest said don't go into this room in particular,
or at least don't sleep there.
I'm sure you're gonna tell me they slept in the room.
Right.
It's like, come on.
What do you want to bet? It was the room with the two quarter circle windows, the classic look of it.
It must have been like, it's a nice room. We gotta sleep in it.
Yep. Okay. So place gets blessed. Family moves in. Every night, George would wake up at exactly 3:15 a.m., supposedly the same time that the DeFeo murders took place. George even claimed that he saw his wife and their 2 children levitating over their beds at night. George, in another instance, said he heard a marching band in the living room one night. So he goes to the living room to investigate. He finds no marching band, of course, but instead all of their furniture had been shoved to one side of the room. Kathy reported invisible hands hitting and scratching her. She put a crucifix in the living room to see if it could help. Supposedly, it turned upside down immediately, and the room began having a sour smell to it.
All of this is like very vivid.
Very vivid.
And in your face. None of this is subtle whatsoever. And it seemed like it popped off immediately.
Yes. And there's, I think, something to that.
Okay.
Either something very validating to this whole haunting, or something that plays very heavily into one of the theories.
Okay.
Sorry, I know I keep burying the lead.
No. But I'm just sitting here. I'm just like, this is so aggressive, so fast away. Like,
this is all with first month. 100%.
I feel like, I don't know. I feel like it's so wild and it seems so consistent that if I was in this situation, right? First off, I'm out. Done.
Yeah.
That's way past my line. But also, I feel like I could literally be like, yo, Trevor, like, dude, this house is not a good house. And you'd be like, come on. And then I just bring you. And then all of a sudden, it'd be like, boom. Now you see it.
I'm taking up all your ghost mosquito bites.
And then I asked my neighbors, hey, can you come check this out? This is being kind of weird. I would get so many people to come to this. If it's so vivid like this.
I'd be holding tours.
Right. I'd be like, look, this house, it's freaking like over the top crazy.
And if they don't see it, like maybe having external activity in the house makes it calm down.
True.
Either way.
Then start renting out rooms.
Right. You can sleep in the no sleep room. So anyway, now Kathy's having her own experience. And then, as the story continues, the children began sleeping on their stomachs, very reminiscent to how the entire DeFeo family was found in their beds face down. And they claimed, additionally, that doors were coming off the hinges, green slime was oozing from the walls and out of the keyholes, very reminiscent, actually, of the blood house that we talked about a few weeks back. They even claimed to have seen a room full of flies in the middle of winter and unexplainable hoof prints outside.
I'll be honest, with this show, there are always claims. This might be the longest list of claims we have ever experienced.
We're hitting every type of sighting.
It's a little over the top.
Yeah.
I'll be honest. It's overbearing.
You're
experiencing this and that and this and that and this. And
right.
I'm like, holy, like that's just
sensory overload.
It is. And it also just seems like, well, bring in the authorities, the priests, the whatever. Ladies and gentlemen, we got them.
Oh, yeah.
Ghosts are real. You know what I mean?
They absolutely bring.
It just feels like this would be the place to bring all that to light.
This is the Mecca, right? Based on everything you're saying.
Seems like it.
This is Proof City,
yeah.
Right? And we will get into that. They do get a whole crew together to come explore this. But I do want to kind of go through again, as you kind of put it, a laundry list of sightings.
So
because
long.
I mean, there's some other more mundane things like the garage doors opening and closing. It could be an electrical misfire. Kitchen knives flying off the counters, a little bit dangerous. But most eerily of all, apparently there was a pig-like creature with red eyes that would watch them. This pig creature would go on to be depicted in the movie as Jody. You might recognize her as the one. She looked slightly decayed. It was Missy Lutz's imaginary friend. So that's how the movie envisioned this squonk-like entity. Maybe it was squonk. But certain areas of the house, kind of to button this all up, seemed to be colder than others, as if there was some sort of draw of your energy. And this is just a few. I mean, you say that there's a lot going on here, and there are. This is just a few of the countless oddities that the Lutzes reported in this house. So
these are just a few?
This is just a few. And very short time window. After only 28 days, the Lutzes decided to leave the house. It took them 28 days of this to then decide to leave.
Also, all that happened within a month?
Mm-hmm. I'm picking up what you're implying right here.
This has got to be how is this not the evidence that we need?
Right.
Okay.
So, in 1977, not too awful long after, their story was published in the novel The Amityville Horror by Jay Anson, which was further popularized by the movie of the same name.
Yeah.
And of course, I think it's been remade as well.
I think so.
But either way, Anson's book was based on about 45 hours of interviews with the Lutz family inside the infamous house itself. So with that said, that's kind of some of the experiences had between the two families, completely different scenarios. But let's go into the investigation, because as you're kind of indicating, this is the moment. This is the time that you get the A-team together and you investigate it. And boy, did they pull out some names. So 2 months after the Lutzes left the house, a local television station decided to start their own investigation. They're the ones that pulled this team together. Reporter Laura Didio gathered a team of parapsychologists to assist her in looking into the haunting. Interestingly, this team included Ed and Lorraine Warren.
Oh.
I didn't know that, honestly, until Kelsey, who's going to be on in just a bit, told me about that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What a crossover.
And now you know why they got their own MCU sort of situation, their own cinematic universe of Conjuring.
Because they did a bunch of things in a bunch of different places.
Oh, yeah. And for anybody listening, if that name sounds familiar, they're the very Warrens from the Annabelle doll story that we covered a few weeks back,
yes, they
including a bunch of other things. Interestingly enough, little side tangent, Kelsey told me that after this whole thing settled, yes, they were involved. Yes, they kind of investigated and kind of helped spur to life this idea of hauntings, and then quickly dissociated from this, almost to kind of have it removed from their resume. I don't know.
Why?
It's a good question.
I'll ask Kelsey later.
She's kind of shaking her head. But we can, we'll ask her straight up later on. But yeah, that's probably why, personally, I've known this story quite well. I've watched the movies.
Never knew.
And I never knew that they were involved. And that could be why. So this team made some interesting claims, like being overcome with the feeling of sickness, feeling like they were, quote, personally threatened by an evil being, and some said that they saw crying children in this house. Lorraine said that she hoped her Amityville experience was, quote, as close to hell as she'd ever get. Some really strong words about her experience there.
Very big, very popular paranormal investigators.
Yes.
Making a very big statement.
Absolutely.
How's the world not just like, that's it? this is the moment, this is the place that like cracked this whole thing wide open.
Yeah. And how is it not?
Yeah.
Oh. I'm about to like continue down that path because like honestly,
it just seems like this is it.
I know. I love how much people have experience-wise.
Yeah.
And I don't want to throw that out just because it's like their own anecdotal experience, but like there's very little evidence to substantiate a lot of this, which makes it tough.
Yeah.
And does feed into some of the theories.
And I will say, because we talked about this in the beginning, and don't tell me, but it's just like a crossing thought. The house still exists. Google's blurring it, which there might be, like I said, tell me later, there might be people that live there. How are they not experiencing a ton of things?
Right. Or maybe they're just straight up not, you know? So, Gene Campbell, a professional photographer, was part of this team. He captured a photo that seemingly featured a young boy with glowing eyes peering around a corner. I've talked about this photo in a previous episode. I don't remember when, because this photo always comes to mind when I think about ghost photos. Some believe that this young boy is proof of paranormal activity and that it is a ghost of one of the deceased DeFeo boys roaming the home. However, and I'm going to show you this photo now, Task Force at RedWebPod on social to check it out. But other than this photo, the team didn't really find anything too concrete. And so it's really hard to walk away from this story, hearing all these stories, and not having the evidence to properly back it up.
I mean, it's clear as day. It's a boy.
It's almost so clear that it makes me wonder,
through.
Was there just an actual boy there?
I mean, it looks like
it's creepy.
I mean, that's, look, whether you're going to think it's a ghost or not, there's a boy there.
Yeah.
Doesn't even look transparent. The only odd thing about the boy is that his eyes are glowing.
Like they're pure white,
they're
essentially.
pure white.
Yeah, if you're listening after dark, don't look at this.
There's no transparency there. There's not translucent.
Yep.
He's not like saran wrap. You can't see through him. He's there. That's a boy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You can tell, like you're saying, clear as day, he's blocking part of the door frame.
Yeah.
He's there.
Not floating or anything.
Yeah.
Not going through any. That's just a boy in a door frame.
Yeah. And I will say he does look, from what little you can tell of this photo, like a generic young boy. However, held up next to the photo of a young John DeFeo, victim of the incident we discussed earlier, does look similar.
Yeah.
Looks similar. Well, hello there, Task Force. A little break from the macabre. What a good choice of words, because one of our fantastic sponsors today is good friends of ours, but I'll talk about them in a second. Right now, go subscribe to youtube.com/redwebpod to be sure that you don't miss out on our Halloween special here at the end of the month. We go to Penhurst Asylum. We get all creeped out. We have evidence. We want to see if you guys see anything. Let us know in those comments when it happens. But anyway, that's coming soon, so be ready for that. We also have case files on our YouTube channel where we get hands-on with all sorts of stuff, whether it be theories from you guys or trying to debunk popular scary TikToks or just getting hands-on with our ghost hunting tech, what we're going to use on Halloween. That's the very stuff that we kind of break down and talk about. That's what that show is all about. And then sometimes, we debate about owls and catfish. So let us know which one's more terrifying. But with that said, let's talk about some of our fantastic sponsors. This episode of Red Web is brought to you by 30 Morbid Minutes, a fantastic show. This is not even the read. This is just me talking to you from Elise Willems and Jessica Vasami, two good friends of mine, and a fantastic show it is. So let me set the tone. Nickbot, strike the music. Perfect. Do you ever find yourself awake in the middle of the night reading real-life stories that make your skin crawl? The creepy history behind Victorian nursery rhymes or tales of sleep paralysis demons. Perhaps you've seen the haunting images of corpses on Mount Everest, read the last meal requests of death row prisoners, or experimented with seances and spirit boards? If you've ever wondered, hey, what the heck exactly is necro-cannibalism, then 30 Morbid Minutes is the podcast just for you. It's hosted by Elise Willems and Jessica Vasami. Each episode investigates a new topic ranging from macabre to morbid to downright creepy. Sourced straight from history and the headlines of today. I know, Task Force, that's going to tickle your fancy. This is essentially the sister podcast to Red Web, so please subscribe now on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you prefer to listen to podcasts, because they have new episodes every Tuesday. Or if you're a Rooster Teeth First member, you get it 24 hours early on Mondays. This episode of Red Web is also sponsored by Audible. You know, people ask me, Trevor, you're so superhuman. How do you do everything that you have to do in the day while also reading all of these books that you talk about? And to that I say, Audible is the answer. It allows me to do all the things like working out, going on a walk, researching things of sinister nature, while also listening to the books that I prefer to listen to. Right now, I am actually listening to the end of Ready Player 2. I listened to both Ready Player 1 and 2 on Audible, and it was a joy. I went on a trip recently, and that was what I listened to in the plane. I listened to it in the car while I drove around, and it's just a good way to get immersed in your favorite books while also having sometimes some really good voice acting. And if you prefer, there's also some audio podcasts on there that have great sound design if you're into that. So Audible is a super good way to digest the books that you love while also kind of multitasking, doing whatever else life asks of you. And if that sounds interesting, Task Force, let Audible help you discover new ways to laugh, be inspired, or be entertained. New members can try it for free for 30 whole days. Visit audible.com/redweb or text redweb to 500-500. Once again, that's audible.com/redweb or text redweb to 500-500 to try Audible for free for 30 days. Audible.com/redweb. This episode of Red Web is also sponsored by BetterHelp. We live in a complicated world, and sometimes, whether it's our personal or professional lives, it's easier to focus on the problems instead of coming up with solutions and get stuck there. But when we reframe our mindsets, sometimes those same situations become easier to work through. It can be difficult to train your brain to focus on problem solving, especially when you're faced with life's challenges. At least, it's not easy on your own. So, the question is, how do you learn? Well, that's where a therapist can help. We can all get so much from therapy, whether it's reducing stress, helping with anxiety or depression, or just healing in general. If you're interested in giving therapy a try, BetterHelp is a great option. It's entirely online, it's convenient, it's private, and it's affordable. When you want to be a better problem solver, therapy can get you there. Visit betterhelp.com/redweb today, Task Force, to get 10% off your first month. Once again, that's betterhelp.com/redweb for 10% off your first month. And with that said, let's dive right back into the mystery. Let's dive into some of the theories that attempt to answer what's going on here. Unlike last week, when we talked about the Winchester house and ended with the theory of a hoax, which had a lot of new information in it, we're going to start with the idea of this being a hoax. Because this is a very popular theory, is that the Lutz family fabricated the story of the haunting in Amityville. George Lutz was reportedly a huge fan of the paranormal. He was said to dabble with the occult and attempted to summon spirits into the house. And the Lutz family also had financial issues and may have not actually been able to afford this house. So they almost kind of consider this as an investment into a story. So as we mentioned kind of at the top of the episode, they had originally been looking for a house in the $30,000 to $50,000 range.
Whoa, you're getting close to double.
Actually, yeah. Yeah.
Depends on where you are in that range.
Right.
You're double or close to.
Absolutely. And so that was before they decided to go with this house. So maybe, hey, they thought they could get their money back if they jumped into this haunted house, this house with a dark past, and create some sort of paranormal story to go along with the gruesome history and make some good bucks.
See, so this is the type of like detail that obviously could have been manipulated just over time, not even purposefully. But I'm just like, how do we know that? Like that's crazy. That's crazy info to know.
That's
like
deep cut knowledge.
Yeah, like the family was looking for a house in this price range. I'm like, how the hell do we?
Right.
Yeah.
Where's that realtor? I want to hear from them.
Yeah. Ooh, that does give weight to the fact that like, why would you buy a house that expensive?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure it's like something, man, when I go, I don't want at this point anyone to remember me. It just seems like it's like, imagine if he wasn't into occult stuff. Then you got people here being like, oh, he was into some occult stuff. I'm like, no.
Wait a minute. Maybe he's haunting the house because he's like, no.
Right.
I was just a regular dude.
I was a regular guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm. So this is when the Lutz's lawyer came into the picture. This was also, oddly enough, Butch DeFeo's former lawyer, William Weber. He claimed in 1979 that the Lutzes and him created the story of the Amityville Horror over drinks to sell the story and make some cash. Weber ceased being their lawyer after financial disagreements, and they went to Anson for a book deal. I think Jay Anson, who I mentioned earlier. Although it could be argued that Weber only said this because he had been the original choice for the book's author, and then he may have wanted some kind of revenge. And so it is worth saying that maybe...
Could be, just him slandering.
Right, exactly.
Oh, because there's motive there for that.
Right. However, the wrinkle here is that the Lutzes have in fact undergone polygraph or lie detector tests, which aren't 100%.
They are not.
But, so leave that as it is.
But still, I would think that, it's my very little knowledge.
Sure.
Not 100%, and I would like to see the percentage of that inaccuracy, and what percentage of that is because, the person knows how to get around a lie detector test. You know what I mean?
I think that's it, too, is, staying calm, believing in your lie.
Right. If it's... I don't know, 25% inaccurate. What percentage of that is people that know how to get past that test?
And what percentage of it is just false positives or whatever? So interestingly, despite the accuracy being here and there, George and Kathy took the test separately with polygraph specialist Chris Gugas. So Gugas claimed that they were both telling the truth. That's another little wrinkle there with this being kind of... Now, again, we're going to take a few seeds from each of these theories, and they're all going to kind of blossom, I think, in the final one. But moving on, there is kind of now a delineation, was this house cursed before the murders, or was it cursed after the DeFeo murders? So we're going to talk about those two different theories, and then we're going to talk to Kelsey. So the theory that some believe is that the house was haunted prior to DeFeo Jr. killing his family. Supporters of this theory believe that evil spirits inhabited the house prior and were the voices that DeFeo Jr. claimed to be hearing in his head. DeFeo Jr.'s lawyer entered an insanity plea on his behalf, stating that these voices he was hearing actually took control of his behavior that night. And that's when the murders took place. So this would make the entire DeFeo family, including Jr. himself, victims to these evil spirits. However, again, Jr.'s stories about the murders were very inconsistent, but it's also likely the murder was in retaliation to the abuse he faced from his father, so there is personal stakes in play that do tend to soften the blow of this being purely an act of prior haunting.
Oh man, so a handful of things. One, look, there's no excuse for what DeFeo Jr. did. I'm curious as to why. We'll never know, but as to why, the rest of the family.
Oh, why everyone?
Yeah,
why everyone was a victim of this? Yeah.
So that's interesting. Own personal experience. I haven't seen my dad in a long time, and him and we butted heads, but never was I everybody in the family.
I gotta retaliate.
That's a whole different. Just being on the surface level of that, just that's a whole different mindset barrier line to cross. So that's just I'm just so curious on that aspect of that.
Right. I mean, a wrinkle to your point is in the moment. Again, his stories were inconsistent. There's evidence in play, et cetera, et cetera. But he's also saying in the moment that he himself is this was the mafia. And not to jump too far into it too fast, but some of what Kelsey has to talk about.
Oh, touches on that.
It touches on this as well. Would this have taken multiple people? Was this something that he himself could have? And I'm not trying to clear him of anything, but it's something to discuss, because you're right. This is impacting the entire family.
Yeah.
So it's a lot.
Another thing too is we've done a ton of episodes. I think it's maybe only a couple or a handful where it's okay, there was a murder, another group comes in, another murder. It's usually just there's the one, or maybe there's the one and there was previous things that happened here. This is a very fully detailed picture, because normally we would just have
one incident,
and the details of that. We're getting two separate occasions and the details of both of them.
So I think how they may or may not relate, and domino effects.
Yeah, and that hit me because we're talking about like when did the haunting start, right? And it's like, oh yeah, like when could it have? Because there's at this point multiple points where it could have happened or like started or kicked up.
1,000%.
Yeah.
And that's where it makes this particular story, it's both interesting and frustrating, and also of course dark. But like, what of this is paranormal? Where does that element start?
Yeah.
And or honestly, is that a part of the picture at all? It's like that is that is another angle to truly look at. Like, you can easily like make the waters muddy by bringing things in like that. And then I mean, the paranormal piece, it doesn't have a lot of evidence.
How does that even
stories.
Like hold up in court at all whatsoever?
Well, it doesn't. So what happened was the prosecution.
Well, yeah. I was saying, and like I know it doesn't, but I'm just like, how? Like what?
Right. Like, what do you do?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's where the prosecution did not take interest in the insanity claim, claiming and arguing rather that DeFeo Jr. was an addict who was well aware of his actions, and that this was clearly just an attempt to clear himself of direct blame and soften his punishment. But let's move on now to the idea that the curse came after the DeFeo murders. So one of the Lutz children, Christopher Quarantino, claimed that the story in Anson's novel was largely exaggerated, but they did truly have paranormal experiences in the Amityville house. So again, he's like, listen, you're exaggerating the exact story. However, we did have paranormal stuff, regardless of what came before. He believes that the paranormal entities were already in the house due to the evil things that had happened there before, and they were intensified after his father's occult rituals. Some would even say that the house became haunted because of his father's interest in doing these occult rituals. George would repeat chants, attempting to contact the dead or summon supernatural beings in the house, all sorts of stuff that I deeply recommend you don't do. But Christopher said much of what was written in the novels never actually happened. So that is some heavy words that you got to believe from the person who lived there. But he did say that he saw shadow-like entities in the shape of a man. So I think there might be a conflation between reality and the story.
An exaggeration too.
Definitely.
Wow, this is twice this month, because we just covered Winchester, where we're talking about people inviting or bringing like paranormal activity to a residence, which is not normally something that we discuss, if not ever.
Right.
It's like it was already there, but now we're just sitting here going like, well, maybe they brought it.
Yeah.
That's
we're looking at
terrifying.
The points where the house goes from house to haunted house.
Right.
Which is super interesting to explore, because you never hear that.
That being said,
yeah.
I have a question. You know, we did our ghost hunt at Penhurst Asylum. And the task force will see that at the end of the
October 31st.
October 31st. Great time to release it. Say we were there. There were some bathrooms. Some of them had mirrors.
Yeah.
Would you say Bloody Mary 3 times? At that location? Would you?
I did some mirror scrying.
Did you?
I mean, we were there.
We were there.
I might have heard something after, so I got scared and I stopped. I'm sorry. You know, sometimes you just fire from the hip.
Wait, seriously?
Yeah.
Well, you didn't even say nothing?
Well, I'm not going to pull out some Bloody Mary. I don't need to add ghosts to the situation.
Right, but I didn't know you were doing that.
I didn't know I was doing it either. It just kind of happened. Then I got too scared to finish it.
We
I don't even know if I was doing it right.
Look, we teased in the previous episode. That's why you had a totally different experience than I did.
Oh, because I was doing what this guy was doing with the cult rituals?
You're over there like
dabbling with shit I don't understand. Oh, no. Well,
also like, just another little tidbit. Christian and I were there, and we're on location.
Yeah.
It's dark, and I like how you tell us, man, I've been experiencing things all day leading up to this, and I was like, great, you tell us now.
Oh, I told you in the podcast part of that investigation.
Yeah.
Well, you know, sometimes you got to save the juice for the material.
It's wild.
I need that reaction on mic.
Insane.
All right, so that was Christopher, one of the sons. Their other son, Daniel, just quickly moving on from Penhurst.
Yeah, no. Go for it.
Has nightmares to this day about the hauntings he experienced. So really, like, this story is very muddy, and it's really hard to pluck a few things. However, we'll finish up this theory and dive into the next one. So the Lutzes believe that tragedy will strike on any family that lives in the Amityville house to this day, even claiming that a suspected witch had once lived in the very same house. that's just kind of a throwaway fact, I guess. But I'd never heard that.
Throw it onto the pile.
Right. So your mind reading gut instinct of
what do I do now?
I don't know. You've got an ability that I can't explain, because there is not a current owner, but a later owner that did come out and say something about their experience. Because you were saying, wouldn't somebody that lived there now be able to say stuff like have experience as well? So later owner and local to the Amityville area, Jim Cromarty, said nothing like what happened to the DeFeos or the Lutzes ever happened to him or anyone else that he knew that lived in the house prior to either family. So that to me is a huge revelation. I mean, do you believe his word versus the other words? It's, whatever, but that's a lot.
What motive would he have to hide it?
Exactly. Well, maybe he's like, I'm jealous I missed out on my book deal. I was levitating above my bed, but I didn't get a book.
True. But again,
you're right. I agree.
Why would he hide it? Everyone there gets a book deal. It's not a bad purchase for a house.
Right. Well, that leads us
to deal with all that
very nicely into the final theory that we're going to talk about, and we're going to break it down by family. But that this is a story of foul play, that a lot of sinister stuff went down, and so let's talk about it. Kelsey Childs, please come on, aka the Haunted Detective, joining the Red Web family at large. The three-person clap in the room.
I feel like I should bow or something, but I'm sitting in a chair.
I'll bow audibly.
Oh my God. I don't know what to do with this.
All right. So you've seen the documentary on the Amityville house,
yes.
right? And just talk to me about that. Like, it's because some of the family members were in that, right? Speaking to their experience.
Yeah. So when I rewatched the movie later on in life, I was kind of like, wait a second. Hollywood already embellishes stuff, but a lot of this just really doesn't add up to me, specifically as someone who grew up in haunted house and has experienced odd things in my life.
Right.
And I just didn't fully see where A connected all the way over to the number 3 in their story, if that makes any sense at all.
Not even on the alphabet.
Right. It was you're right. I mean, there were so many experiences. We fell off the alphabet back onto the numbers.
Yeah, we did.
So I was thinking about it, and I was like, what if George Lutz was never really possessed, but what if this was just something, a way that he normally behaved towards people in general? What if he was just, a narcissist or someone that didn't like change, whatever it might be, he had outbursts.
Sure.
So soon after I came up with these theories, and I think I actually made a Facebook post ranting about it or something. The documentary, it either came out or I found it, and it was some of the children talking about their accounts, and most notably Daniel, who was the eldest child, and he seemed to have been affected the most out of every kid in that family.
So is this the DeFeo family or the Lutz family?
Daniel Lutz, sorry.
Okay, the Lutz family with the haunting experience. Okay, sorry.
So he remembers the haunting, but it seems as if he's remembering it in a way that a kid remembers something scary to block something else out.
So clearing their mind of the trauma, they insert manufactured experiences.
Yeah.
Which we kind of lightly talked about some of the abuse that may have been going on in that house in, no light terms.
Yeah, and he did confirm in the documentary that there was verbal and physical things going on with George Lutz before he even married into the family.
Got you.
I mean, yeah, that messes with someone psychologically, physically. But even then, the long lasting there is the mental game, right?
Right.
At that point, you stuff that down, you don't want to remember any of the
well, like I said in the previous theory, I mean, Daniel has been haunted literally by his experience in that house to this day. Yep. So it really wouldn't surprise me if there is a more, I mean, in a way, a much more evil, more real origin to his experience.
Or even then, Daniel seeing stuff that could be, seen as paranormal, could just be his mind trying to cope.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
If Daniel experienced it, it's really, really likely that the other kids in the house did too.
Yeah. Yeah, I see that as well. I don't whether it would be they saw it as well or through their sibling they noticed things. Yeah. It wouldn't be something that would be subtle.
I also wanted to bring up the DeFeo murders again because to further this point, there are a lot of holes in that story, as you previously mentioned, but there were some specifics when I was looking into it further that really just didn't make sense to me.
Right. Ooh, let's jump in.
Let's do it.
Okay.
So, firstly, there's a book that was written in 2002 basically dissecting the DeFeo's murder. There's also a podcast on CNN that dissects it as well.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the holes that this author in the book mentions is the bloodstains in some of the crime scene photos.
Right.
Doesn't match up to the family being killed face down in the bed.
Oh, maybe something happened elsewhere and that they were placed there, or what they previously thought.
Them being placed there.
Right. Or maybe a different weapon, they expected. Oh, the blood splatter was from this rifle, but maybe the blood splatter doesn't even.
The pattern didn't match that of a rifle.
But also, on top of that, they found a shell casing from a bullet that didn't match the supposed murder weapon.
Interesting.
Oh, wow. So there was a different weapon. So there was a different firearm there.
Yeah, apparently.
Right.
Allegedly. This is all coming from a book and a podcast, so we always have to say,
I mean, that's the nature of this whole show. We find what we can find and we want to deliver it as factually as we can. But of course, we're not the investigative journalists. We're just trying to piece all the information together.
Wait, we're not?
No.
Yeah.
But you can be the haunted detective.
I'm in the wrong room. I am in the wrong room.
I'm going to be safely on surface level.
Sharks in the water. I stay on boat.
Yeah, I stay on boat.
So we have blood splatters that don't match up with the murders happening in the bed.
Yes.
We have weapon casings that don't match the weapon at hand, or maybe there was a secondary weapon at least.
And then supposedly the police officers on the case and the prosecutor were documented saying that this crime would have taken up to 3 people to commit, which then goes over to Alfredo's question earlier.
Well, I asked a lot of questions.
It had to be multiple people?
Yeah, and why did he kill his whole family? Because that's just on another level.
I'm telling you,
I did ask that one.
This guy can read the future. I'm telling you, that he's got some latent abilities.
I did ask
X-Men,
that question.
but softer, a wide man.
Yeah. I did see him in the hallway earlier. His eyes were rolling back into his head, and he was doing this weird chant. So I think maybe that's how he prepares for these episodes.
I have seen that. It's his ritual.
My psychic power is the ability to ask common questions.
Honestly, though, they might feel common to you, but there's sometimes where you're like, how about this, though? And I'm like, how'd you, we're specifically getting into directly that next. Okay, anyway.
That's true. I do nail a lot of what's next. But it might just be the nature of it.
So we have prosecutors and police saying that it could have been multiple people, or should have been multiple people to perpetuate this murder. Up to 3? Well, 1 is up to 3. Is it at least 3?
I think it was at least 3. Sorry.
That's okay. I'm just making sure. That's as investigative as I get.
Right. Yeah.
A secondary type of weapon casing, indicating that there was some other weapon in play, and then the blood splatters being elsewhere or in some other pattern. Interesting. Because then when you combine that with his on-site sentences, right? He's like, this must have been the mafia or help. He ran off to go get help himself. And then after the police got in play, then the next day, suddenly he's confessing and his story's not lining up.
But also at the end, sure, this is a very traumatic situation. But I mean, the truth is the truth, right? You can tell it 50 different ways. You can tell it backwards. You can tell it in third. You can tell the 5th thing and the 10th thing together.
Right. It'll always be the same.
Yeah, that's the truth. So the fact that he went in jumbled, and it sounds like he was jumbled multiple times. That's, I don't know, man. That's a little rough.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it is said that Suffolk County, which as someone growing up in New York, or as someone who grew up in New York, I can say that this really does ring true to that state in particular. The confession rate in Suffolk was astronomically higher than other surrounding counties. So that kind of makes you wonder, is there a reason he was jumbled?
Right. Is there a reason he was jumbled? And also, just to stick to facts, why this county has a higher level of conviction versus the rest, or admission of guilt or what have you. What other pressures are in play? Or are they just the best investigative team on the field? And yeah, I don't want to dive too much deeper into that because a lot of feelings will come out. but like it is something of note in this particular case. 100%.
And I'm talking like 95% compared to like 20 or 30%.
Right. A huge disparity. A town over, there's like 75%.
I feel like that should be looked into.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of things should be.
That is you're not wrong. I feel like that's just such an outlier of a number then.
Yeah. This case is odd. I don't know if I don't want to step on any other like revelations you got as far as like the foul play angle, but because I don't want to close out this episode just yet, but like so far, like just discussing this, it feels like whether it be on the paranormal side or on the just foul play side or what have you, it's so confusing because it's jumbled with stories and experiences and memories and stories being all over the place. And so it's really hard to figure out, on one hand, where did the paranormal activity start?
Yeah.
Was that in play? Is it the why to a lot of this or some of this or none of this? It's wild. This is what I love about doing the podcast is you end up uncovering so much more interesting curiosities and questions than just the surface level investigation, like watching the movie, right?
Yeah. I subscribe to DeFeo Jr. killing his family. And then from there, the father of the Lutz family was like, look, I'm into this stuff. And so bought the house and want to capitalize off of it.
I mean, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think the only thing kind of with some of what Kelsey's bringing is like, was DeFeo alone? Were they kind of coerced into an admission of guilt? Or were they part of it, right? Or like what level of, that's the part that's the most hairy. That's the hardest to decipher. That I would be really interested to be like a fly on the wall to properly like get the facts down that seem to be lost to time.
I'm surprised there's not any like, I don't know, maybe it was glossed over, but it doesn't seem like anything came up as to why the DeFeo family was even tied to the mob or why would they be targeted to the mob?
Oh, like why did they just kind of name drop the mob at the
like their uncle was in the mob or something. It's like,
well,
it's just
supposedly, according to multiple sources, including this book from 2002, the DeFeo family had connections to local crime organizations.
There you go. Okay.
So
there it is.
There could be motive.
Yeah.
Retaliation, something, money, I don't know.
And all of my New Yorkers listening to this will know there was an entire street in the Bronx, Arthur Avenue, that's literally owned by the mob. Like they own the entire street. So it is a very, very prominent thing to happen in New York to have some sort of mob or mafia encounter.
Interesting.
Ooh, don't like that.
Do you think you've had any?
No, I was just never.
Like, none that I want to talk about.
I was just never, don't worry about it.
Yeah, just don't ask anymore.
Just don't ask about
don't
those.
Worry about it.
Yeah, and different names and different passports I got.
That's so interesting though. Like it also kind of gives me the willies, the heebie-jeebies.
Yeah, that's real life stuff.
Yeah, that's something so real that I'm kind of like, I'll move away from that.
Yeah, I'm just doing my thing.
We would go eat at this restaurant when my sister went to school in the Bronx, and there would just be like a back table, a round table, and
it's
men
like
in suits just like sitting around with cigars and stuff. And we were like, okay.
You're in a scene of Godfather.
Right.
Yes,
that's what's
pretty
happening.
much.
Cut to the conversation happening at that table where the guys are like, man, we feel like gangsters right
like,
now.
We feel so cool. I'm so glad we rented these suits.
Yeah. this mobster themed bachelor party is awesome.
That's so good. Hey guys, hey Paulie, do you ever think that we maybe shouldn't do a mobster themed bachelor party here in the heart of New York?
Well, the thing is probably like,
or talk like this.
The thing is just like that, but instead it's just very much like, hey Ryan, no, I'm Paulie today. Oh yeah, my bad. Hey Paulie,
you ever think this is a bad idea? He goes, absolutely every day.
Every day
I do. All right, well, as we come to a close, I'm really happy we finally broke the seal having a guest on Red Web.
Yeah, we did.
And what better than Kelsey Childs, aka the Haunted Detective, who is bringing up a sister podcast. No date yet. You want to talk about it? You want to tease what you got working on?
I could.
Do it.
Oh, okay.
Get in there.
So it's going to be an investigative style podcast. So if you like the points I brought up here, you're definitely going to like the podcast that we're creating, basically.
Yeah.
So it's going to be true crime, urban legends, and how it really relates to real life and real history and psychology and everything of that matter.
And you're going to talk to people. You're going to be doing more of the investigation that we safely tuck ourselves away from.
Right. Lots of deep dive in journalistic type stuff.
Yeah, we're actually, all of the dangerous investigations we're going to make Alfredo do. That's already,
that makes sense.
Contract.
Yeah, no, I did think that was worth putting in the contract.
That's wow. This is my last episode.
This is 5th last episode. Dang. Well, Kelsey, thank you so much. For now, until that podcast comes out, where can they find you on social media or on TikTok or whatever?
I have no social media. No, I'm on TikTok.
That'd be wild.
That would be really, that's like a red flag nowadays.
We talked about that. I don't know if it was here or
would you date somebody without social?
No, yeah.
That was here.
Yeah, that was here. Yeah, we talked about that. Like, is that a red flag?
That is a red flag nowadays. You're right. But at the Haunted Detective
on TikTok and the Kelsey Childs on Instagram.
Heck yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks, Kelsey.
Of course.
Thanks for jumping on and talking about this terrible history of a home. But otherwise, Fredo, I'll see you right back here next week for another haunted house.